coming out, and what a beautiful day we have today. You guys are the best, and this space is amazing. Thanks for being such incredible supporters. Also, I want to shout out to the Portland Yang Gang. We've got Stacy and Gina and Chelsea and Eli and everyone for making this happen. This is an incredible rally. Love it. Awesome. Okay, we're going to do something new. I'm going to have a volunteer with a phone. Can I get you up here? All right. I want every single one of you to pull out your phones right now. And I want to see it. Awesome. Now, I want you to text YANG, Y-A-N-G, to 74217. Will you do it? Text YANG to 74217. Does everybody have it? We're good? So, if you're not signed up already, it'll ask you for your name, and you'll put in your name, and it'll ask you for your zip code. You'll put in your zip code, and then it'll send you an invitation to a link to a grassroots fundraiser we're hosting directly after this from 4 to 6 p.m. at the East Bank Commerce Center. It's like a mile away, and we'd love all of you guys to come. Anyone who purchases a ticket gets to take a picture with Yang. They get a selfie. He'll sign autographs. He'll answer questions. There's beverages and snacks for free, so we'd love to have as many of you guys there as possible. That would be awesome. So pull out your phone. Is it working for you? Do you get your ticket link?
Still waiting.
You text it?
Yes.
All right, is anybody else having, everybody got it? Yeah. Woo! Awesome. And now you'll get updates for any new merchandise we have. You'll be in our system. You'll get campaign updates, events in your area. So now you'll be able to stay up to date on everything with Yang. Awesome. Okay, now, for some of you guys that are new, Andrew's on the way over, and he is going to talk a lot about math and numbers, and he's going to say a lot of amazing things and statistics. You guys have these amazing signs. Everybody hold them up. Woo! I see Yang Gang. We've got Andrew Yang for president. I see Humanity First. Awesome. I see PDX Yang Gang back there in the $1,000 bill. I love it. Awesome. So anytime he comes on and he says anything about math or statistics or numbers, I want you guys to throw your rally signs up in the air, and especially if you have a math sign, and say math back at them and scream it back. So we're going to practice. When I say math, you're going to say math. When I say math, you say math. When I say math, you say math. Awesome. You guys got it? Awesome. Okay, great. I'm super excited. This is a great crowd. Keep the energy up, guys. And I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Stacy Rutland. She recently went to a Seattle rally and was super inspired. She's been so instrumental in helping set up the grassroots fundraiser, this rally, as well as other fundraisers, and just been absolutely incredible. So Stacy Rutland's going to come speak for a few minutes.
Thank you, Shelby. So my name's Stacy Rutland, and I'm a local business owner here in Portland, and I'm super happy to be here. The campaign asked me to say a couple words, talk a little bit about how I learned about Andrew and what about him makes him stand out from the rest of the pack, makes him my candidate for president. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a story, and then we'll introduce you to the next person who's going to introduce Andrew. So my story with Andrew and his campaign and policies really starts probably where a lot of other people's stories start, which was with depression. I found myself about 2 years ago in quite a state of kind of dark depression about, I wasn't quite sure what, but not feeling very good about, in general, how things were going. And as I unpacked that a little bit, I realized that what was really at the heart of that for me was feeling a little bit hopeless about our future. And I have a 12-year-old son, and so the future is very personal for me, thinking about what kind of world not only are we leaving for them, but also how we can try to minimize the suffering that potentially could happen as we continue to make some not so great decisions for ourselves, our nation, and ultimately for the globe. And so, so not feeling really great for quite a while, and really not seeing anybody out there that was just as deeply as concerned as I was, understanding how critical things are right now and how we're at this important moment to really shift things or to stay the course and potentially continue to kind of go down a wrong path. So the next thing that happened for me was I got introduced to Andrew Yang. And like most of you, you probably, I first heard about Andrew Yang from a friend. And that's obviously a big part of how grassroots campaigns like this work. So the person who introduced me to Andrew Yang, his name is Chauncey Strode. He's a great family friend, and he actually has been, I think, instrumental in probably converting 50 or 60 people in Portland to Andrew. He's been a huge championing person in that, so I wanted to give a shout out to Chauncey and all the work he's been doing, which is awesome. I think it's really critical as we're all here understanding how one person can have such a massive effect on changing people's understanding of what could happen and how Andrew really is the answer for taking us where we want to go. So the three things that I think for me that stand out about Andrew that are so unique and so important and critical to this time and why I started to feel hopeful and actually excited about the future as I listened to more interviews of him and read more about him. The four things that I see about him that are key is, the first is how he comes from such a deep place of empathy. Everything that he does, all of his policies, really stem from this idea of a human-centered economy, human-centered policies. He understands and wants to understand humans, what their problems are. Woo-hoo! And I think that this is a critical piece to actually being able to create solid policy. If you know what the problems are, you actually might be able to solve them. The second thing that I think is really interesting and actually pretty groundbreaking about Andrew is the breadth and depth of knowledge he has about economics. And he knows the numbers. That's right. That's right. And I think, you know, what's really alarming for me is how few politicians actually really understand economics, understand at a kind of macro level and a micro level, what levers to pull to get the incentives in place to actually have things working for us rather than against us. And Andrew knows that. He sees it. It's the, you know, the policies that he comes up with, the Freedom Dividend, Medicare for all, democracy dollars. These are things that he understands. Woo! These are what can actually change the tide. Of course, he also is one of the few politicians out there that understands technology, like really understands technology. Woohoo! And we know that most of the problems and most of the solutions that we're going to face in the near and kind of long-term future is going to have technology involved in it. And we can either be okay with not understanding it and having leaders that don't know anything about it and being, you know, kind of behind the game, or we can have somebody who not only understands it, but is thinking about not just the technology of today, but the technology that's coming out in 5 to 10 years, what the implications are of that, how to help guide it. And Andrew really is only candidate that I have heard actually talk about this in intelligent ways, which is super, super exciting. And the last piece that I see him really doing some amazing, kind of having some amazing skills in, is understanding human psychology. And right now we have a president in the White House that understands the worst part of human psychology. He understands how to create anger and fear and anxiety and how to push those things. But what I think is really wonderful about Andrew is that he thinks about human psychology from the other side. He thinks, how can we inspire? How can we unite? How can we make people feel like our community and our government actually has our back? How can we feel He talks about this idea of moving from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance, and what happens when you do that to a whole community. If everybody's feeling good and positive and isn't stressed about money and isn't scared about their health, what can happen? How can we all actually start to look up and tackle the really big problems that we are about to face, that we're in the midst of facing, really, and that are only going to kind of get more and more significant over time? So, in my mind, these 4 things, empathy, economics, technology, human psychology for good, this is really kind of a perfect storm that is all in Andrew Yang and no other candidate that is running for president. So I'm absolutely thrilled and excited to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the fundraiser and directly after this. And I want to introduce Chelsea Wilkinson, who is a coordinator for the PDX Yang Gang. She's going to say a couple words and introduce Andrew. So thank you.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Chelsea Wilkinson, and hands down, this is probably the coolest thing I've ever done. Thank you all for being here. So I am a local artist here in Portland, and I also foster dogs for one tail at a time. And those are 2 things that the market doesn't really value super great, especially fostering dogs. Like, no one will pay me to do that. And I have been a super long-term advocate for basic income, and that was how I found out about Andrew Yang. Many people for years would just tell me that this absolutely can't happen and that the idea of it is just a joke. And maybe that was 5 years ago, but now it's there's a candidate running who actually wants it and passionately wants it, and that's the front of his platform. And everyone else has been just too hands off about it, and we deserve it. This is the wealthiest nation in the world, and I want everyone to not have to struggle like we've been struggling. I don't want to see any more homeless people. No one should have to do that. I don't want there to be a financial rock bottom. And I think that the basic income is this catalyst for our society to show what the true potential of all of us can be. And so that's how I found out about Andrew Yang. I guess I became a part of the Yang Gang about a year ago. I have been here from the beginning, and I joined the PDX Yang Gang and the Facebook Base Camp. The Facebook Base Camp, when I joined, only had 160 members, and now we're at 28,000. So 3 months ago, I started working and leading the PDX Yang Gang, and now I am one of the Yang Gang regional organizers for Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and Hawaii. I am incredibly new at this, and I know so many of you are, and that's one of the things that makes this campaign so great. I have never seen so many people who haven't even wanted to vote, especially not after the last election, actually feel so motivated to vote and to be activists, political activists, and to feel hopeful about, the country. And through hearing him talk for hours, through the depth of his platform and his book, that he understands not only the multitude of problems we face, but their interconnectedness and the different kinds of solutions we need. We need them everywhere, and he's not just thinking of a handful of large ones. There's small ones that we need to address, like eliminating the penny. That's my favorite, or one of my favorite ones. He is a candidate who is not afraid of what real progress will look like, and who will lead us into a new and hopeful version of our future. This is our campaign. And we are all in this together with Andrew. It is my honor as another humble American in this country to introduce you all to our future president, Andrew Yang.
You all, so beautiful, Portland. Yes, let's see Joe Biden do that. Hello, Portland, Oregon. How beautiful are you? This is my first time here, and it's been fucking awesome already. Now, you all know if you're here today, I am not a career politician. I'm an entrepreneur and problem solver, and I'm here with you to solve the biggest problems of our time, the problems that got Donald Trump elected in 2016. Why the heck is that man our president? So you have to look up and say, how did he win? How did he win? If you turned on cable news today, why would you think that Donald Trump is our president today? It would be something like Russia, racism, Facebook, the FBI, Hillary Clinton, and all of those things were there, but they were not the main reason why Donald Trump won in 2016. The main reason he's our president today is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, and if those states sound familiar, those are all the swing states that he needed to win and did win. How many of you all work in technology? At least some of you do. Oh yeah, a lot of you do. That's very yang gang of you. Well, if you work in technology, you know that what we did to those manufacturing jobs, we're now going to do to the retail jobs, the call center jobs, the fast food jobs, the truck driving jobs, and on through the economy. Now, how many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Oregon? And why are those stores closing? One-word answer. That's right, Amazon's like a giant vacuum sucking up $20 billion in business every year. And now, how much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? That's right, so Amazon sucks up $20 billion, gives you back zero, 30% of stores and malls close, and what's the most common job in the United States of America? Retail, that's right. The average retail worker is a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. What is she going to do when her store closes? Cry is what this person just said. It seems about right. We're going to try and keep her from crying. Am I right, Portland? Now, you guys, how many of you saw the headline that Amazon just recently announced they're going to put $700 million towards retraining their own employees? I think about that for a second. Amazon's like, hey, we're getting rid of our own jobs so fast that we're now going to put up almost $1 billion to retrain 100,000 of our workers for new things. Oh, like really, this is like mind-blowing. This is a headline from this week. And then if you think about what this means, they think they're going to automate away a third of their own employees' jobs. And then they think it's going to cost almost $1 billion to try and retrain them for new things. I did the math, Portland. Do you know how much it would cost to retrain us all according to Amazon's retraining budget? It would cost $1 trillion to try and retrain us all. Do you think that we can retrain an American on $7,000? No, it doesn't make any sense. So they're looking at their own employees and they're actually starting to bite the bullet. They're looking up and saying, oh my gosh, we're going to get rid of our own workers and people are going to notice. So instead, they decide to bust out this 700 million and say, we're so benevolent, we're going to retrain folks. And there's so much reality packaged in to this announcement. Because one, they're acknowledging they're going to get rid of a third of their own workers. Two, they acknowledge that it's going to cost hundreds of millions, hundreds of billions of dollars if you were to apply that to the rest of society. And three, if you look up, when you go back to this retail worker whose mall store is closing, what's her retraining budget going to be? Zero. There's so much baked into this press release. I was like, oh my gosh, it's all coming home to roost. And I have a feeling the Yang Gang had something to do with it. Because we've been going around beating this drum everywhere we go, say, look, these are the real problems of the 21st century. And Amazon's like, oh gosh, people are starting to catch on. We really might have to start putting hundreds of millions of dollars to work. And it's not just Amazon and retail. There are 2.5 million call center workers in the United States of America. How many of you saw the recent Google AI demo of software that can do that job? How long do you think it's going to be before we start getting rid of a lot of those 2.5 million call center workers who make $14 an hour? Well, how many years? He says 5, 2, right now. So I know when you call a big customer service line and you get the bot, you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, get me a human as fast as possible, you know, and then you're like, oh, thank goodness the human's here. I do the same shit. I mean, it's like what we all do. But within 2 years, this is what the AI is going to sound like. The AI is going to be like, hey, Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be delightful. You might not even know it's AI. It'll also be a little bit seductive, apparently. Apparently, they'll like build in some like sexuality into the programming. So in 2 years, the AI is going to be really, really slick. It's not going to be an irritant like it is now. But that's going to be a disaster for the 2.5 million call center workers here in the US. Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states. How many of you have friends who are working on self-driving cars and trucks? Some of you do. I know you do. And if you know those people like I know those people, those are some of the smartest motherfuckers I know. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't get dumb people working on that. They got some of the smartest people in the country working on it because the estimated cost savings of autonomous vehicles are $168 billion a year in the trucking industry alone. $168 billion a year. I mean, that's an unfathomable amount of money. It's so much money. I did the math. It would actually pay. Yeah, we're going to make America think harder, Yang Gang. $168 billion a year is so much, it actually pays for us to lay a new robot truck-friendly highway coast to coast. It would pay for itself in less than a year. I mean, that's what $168 billion can do. So if you look up and say, okay, you have the irresistible force, which is some of the smartest people in the country, billions of dollars in savings, and then on the other side, the immovable object is the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living, and the 7 million Americans who work in motels, diners, truck stops, and retail establishments that need the truckers to get out and have a meal. Now, this is like the 5 to 10 year where the rubber hits the road. Only 13% of truck drivers are unionized, so there's not some grand negotiation to be had. 87% are just running their small mom and pop businesses. They've got 5 trucks. A lot of them took out massive loans to buy these trucks, because these trucks often cost low 6 figures. So they say, hey, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to take out massive loans. Imagine if you were a trucker who'd put your life savings into 5 trucks, and then all of a sudden you see robot trucks on the highways that never stop. How would you react? Yeah, you'd be pretty pissed off. You might even be willing to do something dramatic. I don't know thousands of truck drivers, but I know dozens of truck drivers, and they are not the types to just be like, all right, I guess that happened. That's not going to be the reaction. And then anyone who talks about retraining truck drivers, I was just at a truck stop the other week. If you went into that truck stop and said, hey guys, who wants to get retrained to be like a coder or something, they'd be more likely to punch you in the face than be like, oh, I've always had an interest in that software engineering. Well, thank you. Like, of course not. So we have to start owning the reality of where we are in 2019, 2020. The jobs I'm talking about are the most common jobs in the United States, but we know the folks who work in technology is also going to hit accounting jobs. It's going to hit pharmacy jobs. I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I guarantee you can automate that job. So anyone who's a lawyer, you know what I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you're a lawyer, and so you know what I'm talking about. Like, AI can already outcompete human lawyers in a lot of contract editing tasks. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's more reliable. So this is where we are in 2019. Donald Trump's our president. I see all this stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, some of you voted for Donald Trump, and it's cool. He said guilty, but these guys are here from South Carolina. You guys here from South Carolina? Big and Yang Gang. I love you guys. You're a beautiful family. So people voted for Donald Trump. I've met the other folks who are running for president on the Democratic side. A lot of them are very smart, earnest public servants who want to do good, but they do not realize just how deep the problems go. They don't know how, really how much of a shitstorm we're flying into right now. So I went to Washington, D.C. in 2017. Donald Trump wins in 2016. I have oh my gosh, I should figure out how the hell this happened. So I go to Washington, D.C. and I say to them, look, here are the findings. We're in the 3rd inning of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the 4th industrial revolution. What are we going to do about it? And what do you think the folks in Washington, D.C. said to me when I asked them, what are we going to do about it? Oh, their 3 responses were, number 1, Andrew, we cannot talk about that. Number 2, we should study that. And number 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. And I was like, hey, I did the math. Do you all want to guess how effective the federally funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers of the Midwest? 0 to 15%, that's right. We are terrible at retraining by the numbers. And so when I said, hey, the studies have shown that we are terrible at retraining, you know what the folks in D.C. said to me? I guess we'll get better at it. And then they went back to their fucking salad. And so I heard this and I was like, we are really doomed. If we wait for these people to come to our rescue, we are doomed. And someone in Washington, D.C. actually said to me, Andrew, you're in the wrong place. No one in D.C. will do anything about this set of problems because this is not a town of leaders. This is a town of followers. Oh, really? I had someone with me. He could say, oh yeah, they said that to you. He said, everyone in D.C., we're not a town of leaders, we're a town of followers. And the only way we will do anything about this set of problems is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring it crashing down on our heads. And that's why I'm here with you today, Portland, Oregon. I have wanted to come here for months because I knew when this campaign got started that this was going to be one of the hubs. This was going to be one of the frontiers because you all reflect so much of where the country is going here in Portland, Oregon. And I knew that this place was going to be Yang Gang, wall to wall, and I'm so glad I was right so I could come and be here with you today because I've been looking for an excuse to visit for years. I'm 44 years old, and this is my first time in Portland, Oregon. That's terrible. So this is why I'm running for president. I went to D.C. in 2017, and I was like, these guys will do nothing to help us, so I need to create a wave. And we've been creating that wave for the last number of months. A poll just came out a few days ago, and I was in 6th place. That's right, it was so fun. Thank you all, you're the best. But you know the problems are real if the Asian man who wants to give everyone money can come out of nowhere and get to 6th place in a presidential election, right? And the first time you heard about the Freedom Dividend, you said, this is a gimmick. Is this for real? But when you dig in, you find that this is a deeply American idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. He called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King championed it in 1967. He called it a guaranteed minimum income, and it is what he was fighting for when he was assassinated in 1968. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 70s. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971, and one state has had a dividend in effect for almost 40 years. And what state is that? Oil! And how do they fund it? Oil! And what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology! Marijuana, that's right, Portland! It's technology, you had it right. It's AI, software, self-driving cars and trucks, big data. This is the oil of the 21st century. What they're doing in Alaska with oil money, we can do for everyone here in Portland and everyone around the country with technology money. And one of the biggest lies in American life right now is that we don't have the money. It's such bullshit, because I've done the math. Our economy is up to over $20 trillion, up $5 trillion in the last 12 years alone. And do you all remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street? I don't remember that either. None of us remember it because none of us voted for it. But do you remember anyone looking around being like, where are we going to get the money? No. When the banks were in need, the money was there. And now it's our turn. It's time for the people of the United States of America to take back our government. Am I right? So this is the Freedom Dividend, and I want you all to imagine what your communities, what your neighborhoods, what your families would look like if everyone were receiving $1,000 a month. Where would that money go? How would you spend it? Yes, food, health care, child care, the occasional night out, a little bit of weed. I mean, this is where the money would go in real life, but it would make your families, your communities stronger. Most of the money would stay right here in Portland. It would go into local Main Street businesses that would then need to hire. It would create over 2 million new jobs. This is the trickle-up economy. From our people, our families, and our communities up, and we can make it real. There is nothing stopping a majority of citizens in a democracy from voting ourselves a dividend. Nothing at all. It's a deeply American idea. It's been here since the beginning. And when Verizon or Microsoft or Nike decides to give everyone a dividend, everyone goes like this. Right? Everyone's like, oh, that's good management. Nice job. Does anyone ever say like, but what are the shareholders going to do with that money? You ever hear that come up? It's like, what are the Microsoft shareholders going to do with that dividend? We should be really concerned about that. Of course not. That's so dumb. And it's the same way with the United States of America. We are the owners and citizens and shareholders of this country, are we not? We can declare a dividend that's going to make us, our families, our people, and our communities stronger. And I want to talk for a minute about what this would mean for women in particular. My wife is at home with our 2 young boys, one of whom is autistic. What is her work valued at in the economy right now? 0. We know that's nonsense. We know the work that she's doing is more important and challenging than the work of the average hedge fund manager. So we have to start moving our values in that direction and think about what $1,000 a month would mean to her, to caregivers around the country, to the waitress who's getting sexually harassed by her jerk boss, the single mom who's stuck in an abusive relationship. We can help women in particular improve their situations because we know that women are doing the vast majority of the unrecognized and undervalued work in our society. And the Democratic Party can talk a big game about empowering women, or we can do something about it, and I say we do something about it, Portland. Now, one of the reasons why we have this giant myth is like, where's the money? Where's the money? It's because we've now been trained to think of ourselves as inputs into this giant economic system. And it's going to break us over time. GDP's at record highs. Stock market prices are at record highs. You know what else are at record highs? Stress, anxiety, financial insecurity, drug overdoses, suicides. It has gotten so bad that our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years. The first time, well, you all want to know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? The Spanish flu of 1918 that killed millions of people. You have to go back 100 years to find America's life expectancy declining for 3 years. We're back in Spanish flu territory. So if you have the wrong measurements, you're going to follow GDP off a cliff. Self-driving cars and trucks will be tremendous for GDP. They will be terrible for many, many Americans. So what we have to do is we have to actually make the measurements of our economy how we are doing. How many of you got excited about GDP when you woke up in the morning? You're like, oh, I'm going to make a big contribution today. I can feel it. Of course not. That's insane. What would get you excited? What would be something that if it got better in your communities, you would actually be like genuinely happy? Income and affordability, sure. Let's start there. Our health and life expectancy, how many of us have homes to go home to? Mental health and freedom from substance abuse. How about how clean our air and water are? We can actually make that the measurement of our economy. If we keep on following GDP, even the inventor of GDP said 3 things. We invented 100 years ago during the Great Depression. Everyone was freaking out, and everyone was like, we need a number. So then Simon Kuznets came up with GDP, and he said 3 things at the time, 100 years ago. He said, number 1, this is a terrible measurement for national well-being, and we should never use it as that. Number 2, we should include parenthood and motherhood because it's so important. And number 3, we should not include national defense spending because it adds no economic value. So of course we ignored all 3 of those things, and now we're following the stupid number off a cliff as our people are struggling and starting to kill themselves and have drug overdose in record numbers. So we need to translate the right numbers, and only then will we make progress. We're going to make ourselves the center of the economy. We're going to create a human-centered economy in the 21st century. What do you think? And one of the great things is I can make this happen as president like this. All I have to do is do 2 things. Number 1, go down the street to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and say, hey, GDP, 100 years old, really out of date. We're going to update it with the American scorecard with our health, our mental health, how our kids are doing, how environment is. And then the economists will look at me and say, it's about time. And I'm like, that's right, it's about time. And then number 2, I'm going to report to the people of the United States every year how we're doing at every State of the Union. I'm going to be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck. Yeah, the PowerPoint chant. That's right. For those of you who are new to the campaign, you're like, this really is the nerdiest campaign I've ever seen or heard. But I'm going to report on the real information at the State of the Union and actually say, hey, if 8 Americans are dying every hour of drug overdoses, that's unconscionable. So we're going to get that number down by 50% over the next 4 years, and I'm going to report back and see how we're doing. Right now, our State of the Union, what is going on with our State of the Union? Like, man, those things are getting like borderline unwatchable now, right? It's like this weird like theater performance, and like the biggest deal is like whether you stand and clap for like what. It's like I feel bad for the people in that room. You know, these are supposed to be our leaders. They're like freaking like sit-ins at like the Academy Awards or something, like running in. It's like, I don't know what's going on in the State of the Union. So I'm going to present real information, let us know how we're doing, and only then can we make progress. So big ideas: 1's the Freedom Dividend, 2 is get our economy actually working for us again, and then number 3 is solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected and beating that man in 2020. You guys are great. Andrew Yang! Andrew Yang! Andrew Yang! Andrew Yang! Andrew Yang! You guys are amazing. So I want to let you know where the campaign is and where we're going. We just raised a little less than $3 million in the second quarter of this year, and 99.6% of it was small donors. That's the highest percentage anyone has ever seen. This is a campaign of the people and for the people. Our average donation is only $26, so our fans are even cheaper than Bernie's. This is a very cheap gang to join. So if you haven't donated and you want to be an above average member of the Yang Gang, all it takes $27 to be like, look at that, I got it over there. So this is very much a grassroots campaign that is coming up. And so we raised 1.7 and 2.83, and then the curve's just going up and up. We're growing when other campaigns are shrinking. And thanks to people like you, we already got through the 130,000 donor threshold to qualify for the debates in September and October. We're in 6th place in the polls. We're climbing just as a lot of the other campaigns are fading. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to be there the whole time through the fall and then the winter and then on to Iowa, then New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina. We can see the vision. And this campaign has already, we've already surprised a lot of the insider beltway types. A Washington, D.C. journalist said to me something. He said, in Washington, D.C., people are stunned by the Yang Gang. They said that the folks in Washington, D.C. cannot believe that a political outsider and newcomer came out of nowhere and is beating people that have been preparing to run for president for years. Sitting senators, sitting governors, congresspeople, the whole thing. They're like the people in the Beltway are just completely flabbergasted by the fact that this, look around you, everyone just look around you right now, that this is real. Press looks at this and say, this makes no sense, but they don't know something that we know. We know that the American people see the problems that are going on in our communities and know that we can do so much better. We know that Washington, D.C. is not going to come to our rescue and that we're going to have to rescue ourselves. We know that the conventional wisdom and 20th century solutions are not going to work for 21st century problems, and we need new solutions to bring to the table. Now, this campaign is engaging people who've historically never cared about politics before. How many of you, this is your first time you've ever been to a political event? Look around, that's what I'm talking about. And you should know that you are perfectly normal on both sides. You're perfectly normal for the Yang Gang, but also 25% of Americans say they are politically disengaged. Think about that. So if you get that 25% activated and energized, you can run the table and win the whole thing. And that's what this campaign is doing. This campaign is already drawing and disaffected Trump voters. Yeah, a few. There are more. Libertarians, independents, yeah, a lot, Democrats, and progressives. We can build a much broader coalition to beat Donald Trump in 2020 because it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. And that's where we're going to take the country. We're going to wake people up to the fact that it's not immigrants causing these problems around the U.S. No, it's not. Donald Trump's our president in part because he identified a lot of the struggles that people are experiencing. A lot of people are getting left behind. A lot of people are seeing their way of life disintegrate around their feet. This is why he's president. And if you look back at the Democratic response in 2016, he said, "Make America great again." And what did the Democrats say? It's already great. America is already great. And then the Democrats lost. And so to me, this is a time for real soul searching. Donald Trump said, these are the problems, and he was largely correct. And what we have to do is we have to do the hard work of actually solving the problems that he pointed out. Now, what were his solutions in 2016? What did he say? He said, we're going to build a wall, we're going to turn the clock back, we're going to bring the old jobs back, and we need to do the opposite of all of those things. We need to turn the clock forward. We need to accelerate both our society and our economy. We need to evolve in the way we think of work and value. And I'm the man for that job, Portland, because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much, Portland. Chant my name. Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang. Thank you, Portland. You're beautiful. We're going to make America think harder. Am I right?